Hey, welcome to KSE Academy. My name is Lewis, and in today's video we're going to talk about the speaking test of the B2 first exam. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell button. That way you won't miss any of my videos. Alright, so let's get started. What are we going to see today in today's video? Well, we're going to go over the general features of the B2 first speaking test, so you get to know exactly what to expect on the day of the exam. Then I'm going to talk about all the different parts of the test one by one, and I'm going to give you some sample questions that things that could appear in the exam, or the kind of task that you will have to do in the exam, no matter what exam you do. And then I'm going to be talking a little bit about my book, a new book that I published in the summer, and it's called Speaking First 10 Practice Tests. All right, so the general features of the B2 first speaking test are the following. There are 4 parts, as I've already mentioned in the introduction. It's done in pairs, all right? So you know that some of the different official exams are individual, like Trinity exams. But these in Cambridge, in the main suite exams, B1 or A2, from A2 actually to C2, they're all done in pairs. And there are 2 examiners in the room as well. One of them is the interlocutor, okay, the person with whom you'll be speaking, and the other one is the assessor. And the assessor is the person who marks the different categories of your speaking. And then also, you must know that you will interact with the interlocutor and with your partner. All right? Let's carry on. So what are the different parts of the speaking test? As I said, there are 4. The first one is you will have to answer some individual questions, okay, questions addressed to you alone. And these questions are usually about your background, all right? In part 2, you will have to compare 2 pictures and also to answer a question about your partner's pictures. And in part 3, you will have to discuss with your partner about a topic that the interlocutor will present to you. And in part 4, you need to answer different questions which may be addressed to you individually or to you and your partner, so you can discuss together. Okay, so speaking part 1, the questions. So the interlocutor will ask you several questions, okay? The first few questions are fixed, so they never change, and these include obviously your name and also the place where you come from. And then he or she will move on to a different set of questions that may cover different topics. Among these topics, we can highlight things like why you're learning English, your likes and dislikes, work and study, and so on. Right? So these are generally topics that are covered in the typical B2 textbooks. So if you've been preparing this, I'm sure that most of these questions you will already know. Obviously not the exact same question, but the topics themselves. And here we have some examples of questions that you may encounter in the exam. Okay, so this is what the examiner has in front of him or her, and they will choose 1 or 2 from the same set, like from the same set of likes and dislikes, or maybe from a different, or maybe from a different set. So they may say something like, how do you like to spend your evenings? And then they will ask you something like, what did you do on your last birthday? So completely disconnected. But yeah, 2, maybe 3 questions, but normally between 1 and 2. All right, so now some tips on how to deal with this part. Right? So your answers should be longer than yes or no. All right? Obviously, if this is an English exam, so you have to show what you can do with the language. However, some people rehearse their questions and they make them too long. And in this part, really, you don't have to speak that much, right? And as I said, some people rehearse the answers, and this is not good, all right? I mean, the examiners know straight away when a candidate has rehearsed the answers, and if they sound too, too well rehearsed, too automatic, they will just cut you and say, okay, next question. So don't rehearse your answers very much. All right, let's move on to part two, which is the comparison of pictures. So basically, you will need to compare two photos and answer a question. Okay, and this is individually. So let's see the pattern that you will follow for this, or that this part follows. First of all, the interlocutor asks you to compare two pictures with a question. All right, so you will see the two pictures with a question at the top. Then you compare the pictures and answer the question, and you have 1 minute to do this. Then after that minute, your partner will have to answer a different question about your pictures. Okay, and for this they have 30 seconds. And then finally, your partner will compare their pictures, and they will answer another question. All right. So basically, they have 1 minute to do that, just like you had 1 minute to do your thing. And in this case, when your partner compares the pictures, you will need to answer a different question about your partner's pictures. All right. So remember, you compare and answer one question, and then your partner answers one question about your pictures, and then it's the other way around. Your partner compares two pictures and with a question, and you answer a different question about his pictures. All right. So let's take a look at the examiner's instructions. So the examiner will say exactly something like this. Okay, obviously a different topic, but exactly the same words that you can see on the screen. In this part of the test, I'm going to give each of you two photographs. I'd like you to talk about your photographs on your own for about a minute, and also to answer a question about your partner's photographs. Candidate A, that could be you. It's your turn first. Here are your photographs. They show people who are helping other people in different situations. And right now, the examiner will put a booklet in front of you. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say how important it is to help people in these situations. All right? And here is the booklet. Okay, what you will see when having to compare these pictures. All right, so you see the two pictures here and the question at the top. And this is, you need to compare both pictures and answer the question in 1 minute. Right, so when you finish doing that, the examiner will step in again and will say something like this. Thank you. Now, candidate B, do you find it easy to ask for help when you have a problem? And now candidate B has around 30 seconds to answer this question. All right? Cool. And then obviously it's the other way around. Okay, your partner will compare and you will have to answer a different question. Now, some tips for this part. The instructions state very clearly that you have to compare. Okay, this is not B1. In a B1 exam, you need to describe one image, but here you need to compare both pictures. So try to use, comparison mechanisms to express contrast, superiority, inferiority, and things like that, rather than just describe one picture and then jump to the other. All right? Yeah, try to stop using and all the time. When you jump from one picture to the other, it's better to use a connector like whereas, while, however, on the other hand, or something like that. Okay, something that expresses contrast. Don't focus just on one of the pictures, all right? In 1 minute, you have to talk about all of them, both of them. And don't forget also to answer the question at the top, okay? Some people start comparing, talking about the pictures, and they completely forget about the question. And the task is very clear, okay? Compare both pictures and say why, okay? That would be the actual question at the top. And when you're speaking, okay, remember that you're speaking to the interlocutor. So if you're looking at the pictures and then you want to look at somebody, don't look at your partner. Okay, just address your answer to the examiner. All right, to the interlocutor. Don't talk about your personal experiences, right? I've seen many students who started talking about their own personal experiences while comparing the photographs, and I don't think this is a good idea unless it really relates to the pictures. But just think about the task, okay? They're asking you to compare, not to talk about yourself, right? Compare two pictures and answer a question. That's all. And if you don't understand the examiner's instructions, it's okay. It's perfectly okay to ask for clarification or repetition, all right? So you can say, could you repeat the instructions, please? Right? So yeah, ask for repetition if you don't understand the instructions the first time. Now, if after the second time you still don't understand the instructions, maybe it's better just to carry on and improvise, because otherwise that will affect negatively on your mark, right? And this is obvious, but sometimes we forget about this point. You should always use relevant vocabulary to the topic of the task, right? So if you're comparing, I don't know, two pictures about the environment, try to drop some, some environment vocabulary in there, all right? Good. Let's move on to speaking part 3, the discussion. In this part, you will discuss the situation and a series of ideas with your partner, right? So in this time, you're interacting with your partner and not with the interlocutor. So the pattern is the following. The interlocutor will give you some instructions and will place a diagram with some ideas in front of you. Then you will have some time to look at the task, 15 seconds, and you will need to discuss the question and the different options in 2 minutes with your partner. All right? And finally, the examiner will interrupt the discussion and will ask a different question that's not written down. And you and your partner will need to talk about this to answer the question in around a minute, right? And this second question is usually meant for you to agree on something, all right, to reach a conclusion to the task. So let's take a look at the examiner's instructions. Now I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. I'd like you to imagine that a town wants more tourists to visit. Here are some ideas they're thinking about and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task. This is when the examiner places the booklet in front of you. Now, talk to each other about why these ideas would attract more tourists to the town. Let's take a look at the task itself. There you go. So, the main question is this one, okay, in the middle. Okay, this is what the examiner has said. Now talk together about why, blah, 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 blah. And the things that we have around this main question are different ideas, different prompts to help you start the conversation and carry on with the discussion, right? Now, are you limited to only these ideas? No, right? You can talk about other things as well. You can mention other ideas that are not here. And also, you should take into account that you don't have to talk about all of them. All right? This is a mistake that some candidates make, and is that they speed up the conversation because they want to fit in all the ideas, and you don't have to. All right? As long as the conversation is going well and you're discussing and exchanging views and opinions, you don't have to talk about all of these prompts. All right? So let's take a look at at the examiner's instructions after the 2 minutes of discussion. So the examiner or the interlocutor will say, "Thank you. Now you have about a minute to decide which idea would be best for the town." And in this minute is when you and your partner need to or should try to agree on something. Now, you don't have to agree, okay? You don't have to agree. It's not compulsory. I mean, that doesn't show how well or badly you speak in English. I mean, you don't have to agree on anything in particular, but you do have to show that you're trying to reach a conclusion, okay? That you're trying to agree on something. Even if you don't agree, even if the conclusion is that you agree to disagree, you still have to try to work on that, right? So some tips for this part 3. First of all, you should address your partner, not the interlocutor, right? So your partner will be sitting next to you and you have to address him or her, not the interlocutor. Try to have a discussion. I mean, this is obvious, but some people just start talking and they don't know when to stop. And that's not what we're asking here, okay? This is not a monologue and this is not an individual part. So you should try to have a discussion and keep your turn short. Don't just don't just start speaking and not stop. All right? You should ask for your partner's opinions, you should exchange views and so on. Whenever you give your opinion, all right, try to justify it. Don't just say, I think this option is the best. No, why? Why is it the best? And why not the others, all right? Try to cover a few of the ideas, all right, a few of the prompts, and don't just focus on one, all right? Work with your partner to make the conversation flow, all right? This is very important. As I said, this is a discussion, not a monologue, so you should try to make the conversation as fluent as possible. Help your partner when they need it, and this is, I mean, some people don't do this, but because they think that their partner or that they are being compared to their partner, but this is not true, all right? You should, if your partner struggles with some word or with some idea, you should step in and try to help them. The same as in part 2, all right? Don't talk about yourself and your experiences unless it's really useful for the discussion, all right? If it's not completely related or you think you don't have enough time to talk about anything else other than the task, just don't, okay? Just focus on the main question and the ideas that you have around, because that's why they're there for. Give your opinion and ask for your partner's opinions all the time, right? This is, I mean, the examiners will be looking at the way that you interact, all right? And one of these criteria, okay, is that you exchange views, how you exchange views with your partner. So this includes giving your opinion and asking for your partner's opinion as well, right? Good. So let's move on to the last part, the further discussion. Now, in this part, you will have a discussion which stems from the topic in part 3. This discussion will be based on questions like the following. Things like this, all right? So imagine we've been talking about the previous topic where, a town hall wanted to attract more visitors. So, more tourists, okay, people who go on holiday. And the first question here would be something like, do you think you have to spend a lot of money to have a good holiday? All right, so this question stems from the holiday topic in part 3. Now, these questions may be addressed to you or to your partner or to both of you. In that case, okay, if they're addressed to both of you, the examiner will will make a gesture, all right, for you to understand that you need to discuss this together. As I said, these questions may be individual or to discuss with your partner. Unlike in part 1, where I told you that your answers should be kept longer than, or should be longer than a yes or no, but kept shorter or relatively short. In this case, don't be afraid to talk, all right? You need to expand your answers here because these questions are more complex. They're about other topics, not about your personal experience necessarily. So you do have to show that you can talk about these topics, right? To prove that you do have a B2 level, which remember is upper intermediate. So yeah, be prepared to use complex language, and because your answers will be longer, you will need to use some connectors, for example, like things like however, on the other hand, or despite, things like that. And finally, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the book that I published last summer, and it's called Speaking First: 10 Practice Tests. And it's a really good book because it contains a full description of the B2 First Speaking Test in written form, and you have 10 practice tests, 10 full practice tests with every single part to practice for the exam. All right, so if you're a student, this is great because you have some material to work at home to practice your speaking. And if you're a teacher, it's also awesome because you will have some material to work with your students in class, right? And practice the exam. Also, for one of the tests, you have the sample answers. So things that a good or a strong and solid B2 candidate will say, right? So the kind of answers that are expected of a B2 level candidate, right? You also have some ready-to-use mark sheets, which will be especially useful if you're a teacher to be able to assess and to give some feedback to your students. You also have a description of the assessment criteria, all right? So how the examiners think and how the examiners will value different things you do and will give you the different scores. And finally, you also have some advice on how to do each part, which is great because, you know, things like I've said now, like don't speak too long in part 1, try to address your partner in part 3, things like that maybe candidates are not aware of, but that teachers and the examiners are expecting, right? So I hope you find this book useful if you decide to give it a shot. And if you have any questions about it, just leave a comment below and I'll be happy to answer them, all right? And you can find the link to this book in the description. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. All right? And until next time, don't forget to keep smiling. Bye-bye.